Hello there, and welcome to another episode of DirectConnect with Archer. I'm Leonard Chamberlin, one of the managing partners with Archer, joined today by fellow managing partner Brent Castagnetto.
Hello.
Hello there. Thank you for making the time to chat today, Brent. We also have special guest Conor Martin. Conor, good afternoon. Thank you for making the time to chat with us today.
Hey, good afternoon. Very happy to be here.
About a year ago, we had a Direct Connect episode, basically blue skying, talking about, a crazy idea we had, which was, hey, is there an opportunity to kind of take some mechanics from traditional RPGs, role-playing games, to enhance incident response and recovery plan exercises, taking some of those chance-based mechanics, perhaps increasing some of the staff engagement and enjoyment of the exercise, and just kind of brainstorming a little bit. Since that time, we have implemented this crazy idea, and Archer has come to market with an official service offering that we call Datacenters and Disasters, to basically offer a different flavor, upgrade, enhancement option for our traditional incident response, recovery plan exercise service offerings, to basically add some of these mechanics that we've taken inspiration from RPGs to bring to the table. Some of the things that we've seen in our years of being regulators and reviewing utilities, incident response plans, as well as our current roles as consultants and going into some of our clients to assist them, is a lot of times companies are used to doing very fairly boring exercises. Check the box. We're doing this just for compliance. The whole exercise lasts 30 minutes, an hour tops. And, the question is that really moving the needle? Is that reducing a company's risk to help them be better prepared for incident response or recovery? Brent, I don't know if you have any thoughts to share on your travels and things you've seen.
Yeah, no, I think this was a unique opportunity to, make us better, right? Give people opportunities to learn and grow in different ways that they may not have had the experience to or opportunity to before. And like you said, to garner additional engagement. That's really what the effort was driven by, is to get the subject matter experts more involved, more engaged, and keep them engaged throughout the entire exercise process.
Exactly. Conor, and in your current role, I mean, is that one of the challenges that your company has seen in the past? And
Yeah, definitely. I think that this is probably one of the better opportunities we've had of getting somewhere past a rubber stamp document and actually getting us to something useful. To your point, Leonard, a lot of the times these end up being a half hour to an hour, very set prescribed exercises. While it meets our compliance and it raises some awareness around our cybersecurity in these environments and stuff, I don't think it quite gets to the letter and the intent that we wanted to with getting better. So I think by first finding a way to get more people engaged with the gamification of it, I think was a first good step in. We got a lot of extra people participating to a level that they hadn't before. And then also, I think it brings in a little bit more real world situations, a little bit anchored in reality of potential. Don't get me wrong, with the D&D kind of RPG concept, it can go way out to left field, but there's also some play in there to allow us to roll for what's going to happen and how are we going to implement when there's real life scenarios. So I think actually having it in a tailored way of, we don't know what the scenario is going to play out, so we don't know what our answers are going to be, actually get us to that space that we need to be better. And again, Leonard, like you were saying, and Brent, it's all driven through that engagement, right? It's no longer just a check the box exercise anymore. It's something that we're bringing people to the table with, and they're bringing up ideas and engagement instead of just a prescribed, here's an exercise to run through.
yep, yep. Well said. So, spoiler alert. Sounds like Conor's already been through this. So, yeah, one of the reasons we have Conor here today is, he's a long-term client of Archer's, and or his company is rather, and they were the first company that we had the opportunity to unleash this service offering upon. So, number one, thank you again, Connor, for being willing to do something a little bit different with your company's exercise this year. But essentially, when we talk about what mechanics, what ideas we could pull from role playing games, the idea was introducing some type of chance based mechanic for a number of reasons. One, it mimics real world. You never know what's going to happen, right? The engagement itself or rather the exercise is more engaging because the participants, the subject matter experts that are there in the exercise, they're not sure what's going to happen. And then bringing in chance-based mechanics, and when we say chance-based mechanics, I mean, we're talking about, dice, a D20. This is actually an Archer branded dice coming soon to a swag store near you. Yeah, you're literally going to roll the dice. If you don't want to nerd out that much, we can certainly do some random number generators to cut down on that. But again, depending on what type of shop you run, your subject matter experts may really dig that idea. And again, that increases the engagement, the camaraderie. It's really kind of like being in the trenches. In Connor's case, it wasn't just a tabletop exercise. We did an operational exercise, which had its own interesting hurdles as we found out in real time in trying to implement some of these ideas. But on the whole, I thought it was a phenomenal success. The amount of lessons learned that Connor's team generated from the exercise, I mean, just the readout of talking about the lessons learned was
Right.
longer than a lot of companies I've seen use for the entire exercise. And I think that speaks volumes to the benefit that companies can get from this.
Agreed. And one of those benefits that I see is again, it's not only that engagement, but it's also using that engagement to further your programs and further your looking at your continuous improvement and moving that needle to be more secure, more compliant, right? Better operators in this space. And I think what that engagement drives is now you start getting the individuals who operate in this space on a day-to-day basis. Now they're looking for those potential things that are improvements that are coming in the future, right? When we don't know what the next step in the scenario could possibly be because we've already very formulaically laid out what the scenario is going to be. If this happens, what are you going to do, right? It's more about get that engagement of what's the possibilities of what could happen, and then how do we enact those, and how do we address those in real time? Because that's what a real time situation is going to be. We don't know how it's going to play out, and we need to be flexible and have a little grace in that space. And I think an exercise like this aligns it more towards reality if you're careful. Like I said before, you can very easily go down the route of a data center disaster, just like you said, and you kind of lose the plot of what the exercise should be, right? So there is a balance there of getting that engagement and having it fun, but making it useful for your company to put those improvements in and move that needle.
Very true, very true. And we struggled with that as we were developing the exercise for you.
Yes.
One of the things that Archer likes to say is that when we do these exercises for our clients, we guarantee a unique experience. And part of that is the chance-based mechanics of determining the different failure scenarios that you will be responding to, that you will be recovering from. And so, but yeah, it's certainly a balancing act. I mean, we're not talking about literal dragons showing up and attacking your data center, but there are some pushing the boundaries of what even is possible. Brent, one of the interesting perspectives that I think you bring to this conversation is you are someone that doesn't really have a background in any kind of role playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, things of that nature. And so when we started talking about some of these concepts and even going through the exercise, one of our concerns going into this was how were people that weren't necessarily prepared to nerd out as much as everyone else at the table going to react to this exercise. So I'm curious what your observations were from being that in that perspective, that point of view yourself. How well was that received by some of those people that were on the cusp or maybe not really ready to participate as much as others?
Yeah, no, Leonard, I appreciate providing the viewers the context that despite of what my mustache may demonstrate, I'm not a role playing game expert nor have ever played those. but I really appreciated, tactically how the scenario and the variety of changes based on the chance-based mechanic required each of the subject matter experts to come to the table with a specific set of knowledge and understanding of their desk level procedures and how to use those in an effective manner. I think that was key for me from a lesson learned perspective. Is if we've got good people, every entity's got great people that know how to do their work. No question about that. They can recover effectively. But when you press them on, are your work instructions, your desk level procedures, your policy, your program documentation, can it adjust and be adjusted and adapt to the changing scenarios? That was eye opening for me in how this exercise kind of came to conclusion. So I thought that was a valuable piece of it or component of it. I also enjoyed the fact that you didn't have to be a D&D expert, right, in order to participate and be engaged in the process. So those are some of my thoughts. Is that tactical, relevant engagement with their policies, programs, and work instructions or desk level procedures, and making sure those were effective, right? And where they may not be, it's an opportunity to adjust those things and get better, as Conor mentioned.
Yeah. And so Conor, obviously we're not living and working with these people on a day-to-day basis, your team following the exercise. I'm curious, for some of these challenging situations that we did encounter, personnel not really getting what we were trying to do. Can you talk a little bit about how post-exercise, did they come around? Did they come back and say, hey, I really understand now, and or are they still kind of, not ready to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak?
So you're getting a little bit of a mixed bag of that. So initially there was some confusion, like, hey, you guys are pointing out some stuff here that we thought we were good on, right? And there was some pushback from our front line, like, hey, we do this, but we found through the course of the exercise maybe we are lacking a little bit in our documentation here, and it's hard for some of those people not to take that personally, right? So that was the big hump that we got over, because we went from like, hey, we're playing a game, essentially, right? We're rolling dice, we're playing a game, this is fun, to now there's some work that needs to come out of it. And helping frontline reconciles, like, this is for you, right? We've been listening to your challenges and your problems. Now we have it documented, and we want to get you the help and the improvement that you need. Once we kind of got people around to that kind of thinking, we started seeing a bunch of improvements right away. Like, there's documentation, like you guys know the 90-day window that we have to update stuff. There was stuff done within the next week on some of our systems that we had some challenges on, right? And I'm not exaggerating. There's stuff documented, done, updated the following week. And I think that, what really helped us get there with our staff and how it was accepted eventually was when we finally got them to not fight the exercise, right? I think more so than any other exercise that I've done in the past, there was a little bit more fighting the exercise in this, just because it was new. It's a different element of chance and stuff, and the structure around that's never been tested out. So I think once we reconciled with what we were trying to do with having some fun and some chance to how that translates to how they get better at their work and documentation, once we were able to bridge that, I think huge improvements. And there's already people asking, when's the next one, right? We have a tabletop next year. Can we do something very similar, right? So the concept of the results was there eventually after we showed them the worth of it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And yes, we are available next year to do this again. No, that's good to hear that the speed at which some of those lessons learned were addressed. I mean, the bad guys aren't necessarily going to wait 90 days, following an exercise to attack you. So the quicker you can implement those, I mean, that's amazing to hear that.
Coming from that outside perspective, right? Because I grew up playing RPG games. I still play RPG games. I'm okay with that. But but getting that aspect of the non-RPG player to kind of understand that, I think one of the best things that you guys are able to do when we partnered through this exercise was the character sheets. Right, and people that are familiar with RPG are familiar with character sheets. It's like, hey, here's your list of your skills, your abilities, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And what we're able to do with your guys' help is, hey, you're a network engineer. Here's the documentation you should be using. Here's the types of access you should have. And we built these character sheets out. I think more than anything else we did with within this kind of RPG exercise, defining what those roles are in that compliant space probably helped out more than anything, and actually catapulted the continuous efforts afterwards, because we had defined on who's doing what and how and what they should be using in those spaces. So once we were able to like really anchor that in, that's the work. Those are the sheets that we worked off of for the continuous improvement, right? The list of documentation as a network engineer, I should be able to have access and be able to do this, right? Were those cases where like, hey, this should be updated now, right? This is no longer valid. Really highlighted that and made those improvements quickly, because it really set up like, hey, as a role in this position, this is what I should be doing in this type of exercise, which I haven't seen in any type of exercise that we've done. And I don't know that we do that very well in our day-to-day roles, right? So I think that helped us a lot of defining who does what, which is a really tough thing to nail down in these types of scenarios.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that, Connor. That was, when we were trying to think about, what mechanics from RPGs can we bring into this exercise again, we talk about gaming, gamification.
Right. Roll.
At the end of the day, it's still an exercise that you're doing, to improve your ability to respond and recover, and you're doing it for compliance primarily. So of course that had to be the focus. We can't get lost in the idea of, hey, we're rolling dice, we're playing a game. But again, other than rolling dice, what else could we bring from that world into an exercise that could really move the needle in addressing risk? And when we hit on the idea of the character sheets, the idea that similar to a role-playing game, it's going to keep track of all your equipment, weapons. Obviously we weren't going to sit there and build characters for a day, at the beginning of the exercise.
We have the characters, right? Yeah. Let's define them.
Yeah, we define the characters based on people's roles for what they are supposed to do during the exercise. And so whatever job aids, work instructions that they have, procedures, that was their equipment. And so the idea being, if you haven't documented these things, it's not available to you. Talking about different relationships that you would have, prerequisites for doing work. And it's like, oh, wow, you can't actually do what you need to do until this other team does something. So kind of tying those aspects in on the character sheet was also something that we did ahead of time. And, again, I think there's still probably some work to do in fully baking that into the exercise itself. But as you're saying, Connor, the real benefit was the discussion that happened, the realization, and then those follow-on action items to really illustrate where documentation, procedural gaps exist and where there's opportunities for improvement.
Yep, and I went into this with a different expectation, right? You think RPG tabletop games, you immediately go to chance-based mechanics, right? Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I'm going to roll some dice. Maybe I'm just locked out instead of crashed, right? There's some scenarios that we can do there, and so that's partnering with you guys and talking through how do we build this out. That's where a lot of my focus started. But I think it's those other elements in that RPG campaign that you could really get and use for a scenario, right? And it is the character sheets. It's how we behave in this scenario. It's not necessarily what we need to do, right? Because we have the smart people that know how to fix and update and patch and troubleshoot, right? It's how do we document that? How do we prove it to our people? And that's building out those character sheets, I think, was the biggest surprise in my book of what usefulness I would get out of an exercise like this. I went into it saying, hey, this is going to be fun. And we're gonna change it up a little bit and maybe introduce some kind of concepts of we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to adjust. And that's how I approached it. But the value that we have of defining what those roles and responsibilities and what tools and documents they should be using was probably the biggest win for us.
Awesome. I love hearing that. Another thing that I found humorous as we were going through the exercise, there were a lot of people that showed up. I don't know how many people we had there, 60, 70 people. We didn't have character sheets for everybody. And that was on purpose. And it wasn't that we didn't plan well enough. We specifically planned for only the people that have a defined role will have a character sheet. So if you're there to perform some function and you're like, where's my character sheet? Guess what, buddy? your role needs more documentation associated,
Absolutely.
because there's apparently nothing there that's formally documented that says, hey, here's your role, here are your actions that you're expected to perform in these scenarios. So
One
go ahead,
one thought
Brent.
I had, and I would like to get Connor's feedback on this, and both of y'all feedback if you want to provide it, Leonard. Um, the client we were working with, your organization, Connor, has been a long term client. We know a lot of the people that work there, and I think to your credit, you made a decision to say, every entity has one or two of these people that have been with the organization for 20, 25 years, know it inside and out, know the infrastructure architecture, know where all the tools, technology kind of lives. And you made a call while we were rolling this out to say that person can't play. They're not going to be engaged. They can sit and listen, but they can't participate. Why did you make that decision?
That's a great question. So I'm sure it's just like any other organization. We have some system engineers that have been engineering and maintaining our systems for the entire life cycle of the system, right? If you're looking at an energy management system or anything like that, that we have people that have been in this industry doing that for a long time. They know that if X goes down, that they need to contact this person, that person, and then these keystrokes will get it back up. They know that, right? Because they've done it. That doesn't mean it's documented, right? That doesn't mean that their partner knows how to do it. So what I wanted to do is start getting that knowledge on paper and pass to the people that need to know it for the future. And it was more of like, if we know in a real scenario that we're going to call on these people and they're going to be the ones in the seat working stuff out, right? But this wasn't that scenario. This was, hey, we need to get better when that scenario comes up, and how do we do that? By not putting those people in the front and letting them kind of watch how things go and getting their input, right? So we took out one of our highest level senior engineers that knows their inside and out of our EMS system. And we did that so he is not the resource that everybody goes to. Say, hey,
Connor,
how do I do this?
can you elaborate on what it means to take him out?
Ha, sure. So working with you guys through the scenario, we actually made our senior engineer the insider threat, right? It wasn't a just like, hey, this person's no longer available to be consulted during the scenario today. It's like, no, this person actively contributed to the scenario, right? So there is no like, oh, I'm going to call him on PTO because we said he's excused from this exercise. There was none of that. He was a culprit, and that immediately excluded him. And again, it let him be in the room and watch how everything is working and then provide that feedback to us. Hey, I know I've seen this in the past. It'd be really better if this team can talk to this team, and this is how they did that, right? He knows that inherently. I wanted everybody to know that and then document it, right? And make sure that the next person that'll know it, right, when they pick that up. So it was a very intentional thought to keep some of our smartest, brightest people that know these systems out so we can look at that at continuous improvement with fresh eyes, because they know the same thing every time. They might not think that this is something we need to document and train on because they've done it. I'm looking for this to implement this as a program, not for a person to administer.
So good. Such a great idea. And I thought, just looking back on that, there couldn't have been a better opportunity for the people that were in the seat that had the character sheets to activate those skills. You learn the necessary, functions and coordination and the teams
Yep.
that they needed to coordinate with without having that person, right, kind of facilitate all of it. They had to go do the work themselves. Now we had support from this person, but in real time gameplay, he was not there or was unavailable to them as a resource. Additionally, it forced, I think, or it kind of triggered in everyone's mind, hey, we've got to get better from a documentation perspective because some of this stuff just isn't written down the way it ought to be. So I think it was twofold: the knowledge transfer, and then we're enhancing our ability to respond by creating documentation that can generate repeatable, consistent processes and outcomes from your subject matter experts.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, it's been a great conversation today. I really enjoyed the opportunity to chat with you, Connor, and get some feedback from you on how things went, and obviously for you to share that with our audience here. And Brent, thanks for making the time to chat with us as well. Again, hopefully what you've heard here sounds compelling, and you want the opportunity to improve your exercises with our Data Centers and Disasters service offering, Arch would be more than happy to talk to you about coming in and doing the same thing for your organization. So thank you for watching today. This actually will be our final episode for 2024. So hope you've enjoyed the content this year. We'll be back in January with a brand new season and new slate of guests and topics, and we hope to see you then. So thank you very much. Conor, thank you again. And
Thanks, my pleasure.
Thank you. And it's pronounced who dat. Who dat.
Who day. Bengals.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Your support drives us forward. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications, ensuring you never miss out on valuable insights. When it comes to safeguarding your business, Archer is your trusted partner. Explore our robust solutions at archerint.com. Get in touch with an email or phone call and fortify your company's defenses. We value your input. Share your thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to cover, and tune in every other Wednesday for a brand new episode of Direct Connect.